send off parcels of tea, coffee, cocoa to send to Germany and never knowing whether they actually arrived over there. And after the war, she realized that her Germany was completely demolished, especially Berlin, of course. And she never wanted to return. And as
She
adults,
lost family as well?
She lost family too. And
Wi-Fi
as
connected.
adults, my siblings and I would try and persuade her to just go on a visit, see the few surviving friends, distant relations. And she would become quite tearful and beg us not to make her go. She just did not want to see that Germany at all.
Was it hard for her? I mean, in terms of being in India during the war?
It must have been hard because it was British India at that time. And other German friends of hers, the few German friends she had in India, they were actually taken to an internment camp. My mother wasn't, because she'd become an Indian citizen
By marrying your
on
father?
marrying my father. But those who hadn't spent war years in internment camps in India that few people seem to know about in the outer world. And that's why I later wrote a book called Baumgartner's Bombay, trying to evoke that time, what the world had gone through in those days.
As a child growing up in those times, how did you absorb the stories of your parents' vanished past? I mean, you say you were brought up to be totally Indian, but there were these other histories, these other cultural influences.
I think neither of my parents made any attempt really to affect the lives that we were leading, that we had been born to. I was very impressed when my mother once told me that when she left for India, her mother told her, don't bring up your children thinking that they are, a part of them exists in Germany. Bring them up as if they were Indians. And she did, and I have to be very grateful for her giving us this very solid, secure sense of identity.
Although you once talked about seeing India through your mother's German eyes and your father's Bengali heart. What did that mean?
Well, I realized that I had the same emotions about India as my father did. And I was also aware of my mother having a very different mindset, a very much more rational mind, I would say. And of her being very careful to articulate her criticisms, which she had. She certainly did have them. But being very careful not to impose them on us.
Anita Desai, coming of age and becoming a writer in the
says this is a clear sign the intent of the law is discriminatory.
There is a pure communal
Wi-Fi
message,
connected.
a dog whistle as they say, a whistle to some people saying your communal agenda is what we are pursuing.
The CAA was a key promise in the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party's 2019 election platform. The BJP disputes the accusations of discrimination, noting that the law does not strip rights away from Muslims. And BJP spokesperson Nalin Kohli argues Muslims do not need same protections as other religious minorities.
For a Muslim who wants to be an immigrant or wishes to seek citizenship here, to say that I should be fast-tracked when he's coming from a Muslim majority country and has the option to go to 50 other countries, which a Hindu doesn't have, a Sikh doesn't have, is discriminatory then to the entire cause and purpose.
There are fears that enacting the CAA could be a forerunner to a National Register of Citizens, or NRC. The NRC is a register meant to identify and deport all undocumented immigrants, even if their families have lived in India for generations. Only the northeastern state of Assam has such a registry, but the BJP has signaled its intent to implement the NRC nationwide.
This NRC or CA law, it is meant to relegate Muslims to second-class citizenship.
Former chairperson of the Delhi Minorities Commission, Zafarul Islam Khan, says the NRC is part of the BJP's Hindu First agenda.
They say that we do not consider people who believe in religions which came from outside India, like Islam or Christianity. These are not at par with Indian religions.
More than 200 petitions have been filed in India's Supreme Court against the citizenship law. The petitioners argue the law is unconstitutional. In late March, the Supreme Court refused to issue a stay on CAA and gave the government until April 8th to respond to the petitions. Murli Krishnan for CBC News, New Delhi.
Russia has expanded its state of emergency for parts of the Ural Mountain region as multiple cities face severe flooding. Rescuers pulled boats loaded with people's belongings through waist-high waters in the city of Orsk. A dam in that city broke on Friday after being overwhelmed by water. More than 6,000 homes in the region have been flooded, forcing thousands of people to flee. Local authorities say it could take weeks for the water to fully dissipate. A criminal investigation has been launched into possible negligence and violation of safety protocols during the construction of the dam. Southern Ontario has eclipse fever. A once-in-a-lifetime solar eclipse will pass over North America on Monday. The area around Niagara Falls will have some of the best views. Hotels have been sold out across the region for months, and businesses and police are bracing for a massive influx of sky gazers. Katie Nicholson is there.
They're vegan, gluten-free.
Thea Davidson swirls cosmic purple frosting over chocolate donuts in her Grimsby cafe.
What are these? These are your... So our eclipse donuts. Galaxy eclipse donuts.
It's still a day away, but she says her business is already seeing an eclipse bump.
Like I said, yesterday was extremely busy. Lots of people coming in for the donuts. So, yeah, I think it's just going to be crazy.
In Niagara-on-the-Lake, Treadwell, a fine dining restaurant, also going full throttle. Unusual for April, says founder James Treadwell, who remembers the last time there was this much buzz in the area, a Mumford & Sons concert that flooded the tiny community.
We, as a town, ran out of money in our ATMs, so there were huge lines outside, various business. We were incredibly busy all day long.
Down a few stretches of country road, Greg Virch's vineyard is hopping with eclipse sippers. He's curated a wine tasting for each stage of the eclipse.
So we're actually going to be sampling 4 very, very different wine, almost like an eclipse, where you start with something light and bright. You work your way through the darker red wines that we have here, and then you might finish again with the sun coming out.
The only thing that could ruin his plans? Bad weather.
Yeah, so have you looked at your app yet for tomorrow?
Nope. I am trying to. I've been watching it, so we're just hoping that we're going to get good glimpse at it.
Estimates of crowd size in Niagara Falls and surrounding communities have varied from 1 million to several 100,000. Emergency services providers and police have been making safety plans for more than a year. And tomorrow, Niagara Regional Police still don't know what to expect, says Constable Phil Gavin.
There's a lot of people saying, big deal, it's just an eclipse, but we have to plan. We can't just hope for the best and not do anything.
For many, it will be a game day decision, but many others are already in place. Jason and Jeanette Brown and their dog Cookie drove 8 hours from Woodbury, New Jersey to experience this celestial event here.
We didn't see the complete eclipse in 2017, and at that time it was put on my bucket list. And 20 years, who knows where we'll be in 20 years, so live for today.
Question Monday morning, how many others will decide to do just that and join them? Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Niagara Falls.
Now, for a better understanding about what exactly is happening during the eclipse, I spoke to the CBC's senior science reporter, Nicole Mortellaro. So, Nicole, first of all, can you take us back to elementary school science lessons? Give us a refresher on what exactly is causing the sun to go dark on Monday.
Simply put, the moon is gliding in front of the sun, and it is covering the sun in the path of totality. And elsewhere across the country, too, you'll have a partial eclipse because the moon will only be coming a little bit into the sun. So that's the simple explanation.
But this eclipse has everybody talking, right? Why is this particular eclipse so notable?
Well, you know, we don't get them often in Canada, right? I mean, that's the thing. Even the 2017 eclipse, the last eclipse to cross North America, was to cross the United States. So it's an exciting thing for Canadians because you're also looking at, you know, the way the solar system moves. You're watching the movement of the moon, and it's revealing things, parts of the sun that we don't normally get to see. So if you're in the path of totality, the moon covers the bright disk of the sun, but we'll see the outer atmosphere of the sun called the corona. And even in the path of partial eclipse, it's great. It looks like something's taken a bite out of the sun.
But people are being warned to protect themselves. What are the risks of looking at the eclipse with the naked eye?
Well, quite frankly, blindness. You can really damage your eye. To be clear, the sun is no different than it would be any other day, not stronger, not weaker, but we know not to look at it, so don't do that. Make sure you have proper eyewear. You know, but if you don't have eclipse glasses, there are other ways you can do that. You can also make a pinhole camera, which literally is, you know, piece of paper, piece of cardboard, pin in the middle of it, and hold it down, and you'll see that shadow on the ground. Or you can do a cereal box eclipse viewer, which that is more complicated to explain, but I encourage people to look up on the internet how to make one.
Oh, very exciting. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
That's CBC's senior science reporter, Nicole Mortellaro. This is Your World Tonight. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. You can hear Your World Tonight wherever you are. Just subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app or download the CBC Listen app. You'll get the best from CBC Radio, CBC Podcasts, and CBC Music. Most of us don't give much thought to menus. We order our food and drinks and then probably forget about them. But they can give us a glimpse into the past. A newly opened exhibit in Rome has put some 400 menus on display, showing what people were eating during some of the most consequential moments in modern history. Megan Williams takes us on this tasty trip through time.
In a world of QR code menus, it's easy to forget that menus, both the object, the paper, print, and design, and the list of dishes on them, for centuries were at the center of world politics. Now laid out in the A World of Menus exhibit at the Small Garum Museum of Gastronomic History here in Rome are hundreds of menus that span more than 200 years. They provide fascinating glimpses into defining moments of diplomatic aspiration, shows of wealth and power, creative acts of defiance, and calm before catastrophe.
It's a very simple menu with Italian dishes, but not an impressive one.
Says Museum Director Matteo Ghirigini of the menu from the first meeting between Italian fascist dictator Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. who in 1934 held up Mussolini as a model. The menu for their meeting in Venice was a run-of-the-mill offering of Italian cuisine. Crabs from the Adriatic, beef from Piedmont, and void of any signs of trying to impress or pander to.
Mussolini didn't care about Hitler at the time. A little stupid clown, he said after the meeting. Also annoying.
Two menus from the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 provide a gripping contrast. The Germans had laid siege to Paris, starving the city into submission. They set up their headquarters in nearby Versailles, where they dined on puff pastry stuffed with meat. Parisians, facing famine, plundered the zoo, eating elephants, donkeys, camels, and bears. In an act of defiance, a top Parisian chef made an intricately decorated menu of the zoo animal meal, now on display.
So, Germans in Versailles eating vol au vent, and Parisian people eating the animals in the zoo, and rats.
Siamo il 14 del 1900.
Museum founder and menu collector Rossano Boscolo shows me original copies of the menus for the final meals on board the Titanic, a lavish banquet for the first class, a supper of gruel, cabin biscuits, and cheese for those down below.
Questi sono menù originali,
The originals exist, he says, because a menu collector was friends with the printer.
C'era un collezionista.
Others on display include a meter-long menu for the coronation of the last Tsar of Russia before he was killed by revolutionaries, as well as the first, and likely the last, meeting between Pope Francis and the Russian Orthodox Church patriarch and Putin apologist Kirill. While menus for diplomatic encounters continue, those for private events have lost their importance, says Girigini, who created menus to celebrate the birth of his two daughters.
Sad, in my opinion, to not have a menu. It's something that you can preserve, read again after years, and you can remember a moment. And it's important to remember.
Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
Kelsey Ballerini there with Love Me Like You Mean It, the 2014 hit that she's performing at tonight's Country Music Television Awards. Ballerini is back as host for the fourth and she's final year. She's also one of the artists leading the pack for nominations with 3, including the biggest prize, Video of the Year. This year's show features appearances by icons like Trisha Yearwood, who's receiving the inaugural June Carter Cash Humanitarian Award.
I should have been a cowboy. I should have learned to roll around.
And 3 tributes to Toby Keith, who died in February of stomach cancer. This song, Should Have Been a Cowboy, being covered by Brooks and Dunn.
Did your boobs stop working? Did your truck break down? Did you burn through money? Did your ex find out?
There's also space for budding stars like Dasha. The CMT's executive producer says she was only booked to perform about a month ago, right when this song started blowing up on TikTok with 6 billion views. Despite it being called Austin, this is the 24-year-old Californian's first trip to the city where this year's ceremony is being held.
I'm a county jail revival. I'm a Bible in the Bible. I'm a Rolling Stone disciple with a cross across my face.
Meanwhile, Jelly Roll had a bumpy trip to Austin, with his private jet having to make an emergency landing. But he's ending the show with this song, Halfway to Hell. So we'll end ours with the same. This has been Your World Tonight, this Sunday, April 7th. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Danielle Edwards. Here is your weather forecast from Environment Canada. Mainly cloudy skies this evening, 30% chance of showers or flurries this evening as well. Clearing skies expected overnight. Winds gusting between 20 and around 50 kilometers an hour overnight, and lows around freezing, but cooler in parts of the north. For tomorrow, the day of the eclipse, we're expecting sunny conditions with light to moderate winds and highs between 9 and 11 degrees.
Monday on Maritime Noon, the government in New Brunswick wants to introduce legislation that would force people addicted to drugs into treatment. It's called the Compassionate Intervention Act, but some experts say it won't work.
We start with the science. Forcing people into addiction treatment is not helpful or useful.
Call and share your thoughts about whether compulsory drug treatment works. Monday on Maritime Noon.
Tomorrow on Q. Joan Baez is one of the most celebrated folk singers of our time. She's an icon of peace and justice and activism. But Joan will tell you why she felt her legacy wasn't an honest one, and the true story of her own life she wanted to tell in a new documentary.
It was not a breeze my whole lifetime to just sing. It became very difficult.
Q with Tom Power. Tomorrow morning at 10, 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Dr. Brian Goldman. This is White Coat Black Art. Opioids in rural towns go hand in glove. Back in 2017, the Canadian Institute for Health Information said the hospitalization rate from opioid poisonings in small communities is twice that of big cities. Now, there's something new and deadly. Earlier this year in Belleville, a small city in eastern Ontario, in just 2 days, 23 people nearly died from fentanyl poisoning. They're called accidental poisonings instead of overdoses because these days, street fentanyl is laced with non-opioid tranquilizers and other substances that can stop the heart. I've seen its effects in the ER. The people who live and work in small places wonder if their town will be next.
So we use a lot of Muskoka Brewery. We like to keep it local. So yeah, they're just bringing in some kegs for us as we're gearing up for the weekend.
Producer Jennifer Warren and I stand behind a restaurant that looks out over the Muskoka River.
A nice big skate rink back they put in this year. I think they got 1 day out of it, 2 days out of it, maybe.
A kid's playground to the left. In front of us, a flat area for summer picnics and concerts.
This is a good spot for a hangout.
This is Huntsville, a 2.5-hour drive north of Toronto. A place where almost everyone knows someone who's into fentanyl and in danger.
Hi, my name is Michelle Francis. I'm the general manager of the Mill on Main here in Huntsville. Here's our kitchen. This would be our pass. This is like the server area, our expo line where we pull food down. One of our chefs baked us some treats this morning, so it's not on menu, but they're right there. This is our main dining room area. You can see we have our bar set up here. We have our wood-fired pizzas right back here so our guests can watch the pizzas being made. We get a lot of business from town with the theaters and things like that. So on theater nights, we would be lined up at the door, very busy. And once summer hits, it gets a little crazy in here. You can be an hour to an hour and a half wait to get in sometimes. So, and that's from open to close, just busy, busy, busy. So I haven't actually opened it yet. I'm going to open it right now.
This is a big part of why we're here. Michelle Francis opens up a naloxone kit. She's putting this one opposite the wood-burning pizza oven right behind the bar with an easy reach, just in case.
So it does have it has 2 nasal sprays in there.
She knows how to use it because she just finished taking the Ontario Workplace Naloxone Training Program. It's a 90-minute online session provided free of charge by the Ontario government beginning in December 2022. That particular program ended on March 31st. Michelle got to take one of the last courses offered at no cost. Beginning in June 2023, the province has required employers to keep a kit on hand if they know or suspect that a worker is at risk. The Mill on Main is not one of those high-risk businesses. They've never had an opioid poisoning on site. But they've decided it's safer to be proactive, to know how to recognize and manage an opioid poisoning until paramedics arrive. Whether that's enough to save lives is the question.
Yeah, this is where all the magic happens with the ambulances, equipment, But yeah, we went from a 2-bay garage at the old station we were in to this.
Hi, my name is Stuart McKinnon. I'm the Deputy Chief with the District of Muskoka Paramedic Services and Emergency Management.
For this part of the story, we take a 20-minute drive south to Bracebridge to meet up with Stuart McKinnon.
This station has our own fuel pump outside, so we have quite a large fuel system out there. We learned during the blackout of many, many years ago that we need to have backup fuel supplies.
The paramedics McKinnon supervises cover 4,000 square kilometers of sparsely populated central Ontario.
We had a call where, actually, Brad, the soup that you met in there, the paramedic did an 8-hour response into Algonquin Park for somebody. Yeah. 8 hours on foot.
A paramedic here for 17 years, he's acutely aware that his people by themselves are not enough to save those with opioid poisonings. For a pure opioid overdose, naloxone is very effective, but less so when the street opioid is adulterated with sedatives and other substances. Which is why training for lay people emphasizes CPR and rescue breathing in addition to naloxone.
You know, I work in the emergency department at a hospital in downtown Toronto, and there I'm seeing patients who are brought in who have taken some of these newer forms of fentanyl that are not just opioids, they're adulterated with other stuff. Have you seen that yet in this part of Ontario?
Yeah, we haven't seen any specific in Muskoka yet that we're aware of, anyway, but we have heard of some. We get reports from Toronto from their drug testing group, and they send notices up our way. So we make sure we keep our staff and the community informed about certain strains or certain additives that may end up in the supply in Muskoka. And more importantly, we make sure our medics know so that when they respond, they're not just focusing on trying to reverse the effects of an opioid that has been used, but considering other additives or things that might be in the substance and how they need to treat the patient to help them with those. And there's nobody that can say this won't happen in my backyard, the not in my backyard mentality. It is happening, and it's happening with, it could be teachers, lawyers, there could be doctors out there, paramedics. It doesn't matter who you are, what your upbringing was, or where you are today. It's impacting us.
Back at the mill on Main, the lunch rush is starting. The manager, Michelle Francis, takes us to a small private room upstairs.
Mostly it's used for the upstairs patio bathroom and our ice machine. A good place for us to wash our hands.
A lot of people listening to us would not immediately connect a restaurant with a place where you would want to train staff to know how to respond to an overdose. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of drugs and things happening within restaurants. There really is. People think, okay, so I don't have drug addicts coming in here. We're more of an upscale place. And I think it's because society visualizes drug addicts as what you see on TV, what you see on streets, right? They're missing teeth, they're sketchy, they're whatever. But it's not. It's your soccer mom, it's your dad, it's your cook in the kitchen, it's your standard people, right? So, and we do. You get a lot of that coming in. We see it.
Nikki, a server here who we're about to meet, has also seen it up close.
Do you live far away from here?
No, I'm a 5-minute walk, and I enjoy it.
And you walk?
Yes. I walk mostly everywhere. It's a good brain break for me to walk into work, walk home. Hi, my name is Nikki, and I'm here to talk about my beautiful sister Sadie's story.
You brought some photos.
I did. Yeah. I did.
Who's the big sister?
She's the big sister. She's in the middle of 3 girls. Where's the house we grew up in? That's her swimming away in somewhere. Family dinner at Mom's house. Her and my baby sister. She's a huge basketball star. As a kid, invited her back to her celebration of life. She's lived in this town. I'd lived in life for many years. I was shocked at how much of this community showed up for her. And people come up to me and say, she always stopped. She always said hi. She'd always give hugs. She always remembered exactly who everybody was. She was a big part of this town. And a heck of a basketball player. Heck of a sports player, actually. I often warmed many benches for her as a kid. We were very close in age, so we ended up on the same sports teams and whatnot.
Nikki's sister Sadie died in the summer of 2023 from an opioid poisoning here in Huntsville. Sadie was 38 years old. We're not sharing their last names because of Sadie's 2 young kids, currently ages 3 and 5. While they're underage, their dad wants to be the one who decides when they learn how and why their mom died. Nikki and Michelle took the opioid training program at the same time. Nikki's reason for taking it is deeply personal.
What were you hoping to accomplish by taking a naloxone course and all the other stuff that went with it?
I was hoping to gain confidence in ever facing that. I've had one in my home for quite a while since I've been battling my sister and her addiction. And I guess I wanted to better equip myself because I know how quickly things can take a turn for the worse.
You said your sister was battling addiction.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
She's battled addiction on and off for most of her adult life. She turned a lot of things around. She met the man of her dreams and had a beautiful family when she was closer to 40. 2 kids back to back. It might have been a little too much for her too fast.
When did you first find out that she was using?
I mean, my niece is now 3, so it would have been within the first year of her being born. So we're going back a couple years now for sure. I didn't really realize, or we, I guess as a family, didn't realize how severe it had gotten until she got into an accident one day and had fallen asleep behind the wheel of a truck. And that's when I knew for sure that the opioid side of the addiction and the fun had gone out of it, and that it was that physical of a problem. That was about the time that my brother-in-law, her fiance, I should say, came back, and that was the last time she had her kids in the home with her that day, because there was a kid in the back of that truck. She didn't mean for any of that to happen, of course. But that was a real eye-opener as to we didn't have a choice but to get those kids out of that home. And this is the time when they ended up with the father, which he had tried with her for a long time. Eventually he had to walk away for his own sake and for, and which put him in a great position to be there for those children.
Nikki shows me family photos down through the years. She and Sadie as kids, growing up. A video of Sadie with kids of her own.
That's her voice. Being a super mom, she really was.
Well, that was close.
This is Easter. She had a thing for matching the kids' clothes. Everybody. She even made her husband wear a matching sweater that day. He was not very impressed, but he still played the parts. There she is, matching again. Loved every holiday. Halloween. Now as an aunt, I have to go all out. I never really was a Halloweener, but last year I Halloweened so hard for those kids to keep their memory alive. This is some things that I want to make sure that they know that she cared about. And that was one of the last good days we had together. This is the second last time I ever saw her. While I was having her for a visit so she could see her babies.
After the kids were removed from Sadie's care, the heartbreak got worse for Nikki.
And then from that moment on, she was really challenging. A lot of blame. A lot of, The needle thing happened ridiculously fast. From the moment she told me that she had taken it to that level, to the moment she passed, only a matter of 2 months.
Your sister had some incidents of and I know you're calling them colloquially we call them overdoses, but you're right, they're poisoning.
That's right. I did learn that through the course. I'm aware of a time where she'd had to use it on somebody else, and then I was aware that the same person used it on her the following day twice, because the first time it didn't work and the second time it did. That exact day was one of the days that she was to be taken to rehab, because many times she asked for help, and many times we showed up to help her. It's just tricky to time addiction with getting yourself into a bed and having everything in place to go. But I believe it was enough to scare her into going. I think it was one of the times she made it the longest, which I want to say was over maybe 10 days. It was one of the first times in about a year that I heard clarity in herself and her voice again. And really hoping that that was what it was going to be, and that time it would stick. I believe it was 3 times in the last year that we were able to take her And there were multiple times when she'd asked and she had tried. I shouldn't say we had tried. She had tried to get herself there.
Nikki and her family don't have details about the night Sadie died of opioid poisoning. They know she was at her home. They've heard from people around her that for at least part of the night, she was not alone.
That always will bother me. I don't know if the kids that there were, because I know she kept them around. Like I said, she has had to administer them before. I don't know if they had been used, if they had tried. I mean, you can only look into these things so much. First you want answers and you want to blame and you want to, take it out on somebody. But it's, at the end of the day, I don't think it's really anybody's fault.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Nikki found out the next morning that Sadie had died. She was walking to work at the restaurant when Sadie's fiancé pulled up beside her. He'd been driving around town looking for Nikki to tell her face to face. You're listening to White Coat Black Heart. This week, what lay people at a restaurant in Ontario's cottage country are doing to prevent harm from opioid poisonings. Training, rescue breathing, and naloxone can mean the difference between life and death. For this to work, bystanders can't flee after calling 911. But here's the thing. In small rural communities, everybody knows everybody. And hanging around to do the rescue thing may seem too risky. Deputy Chief Paramedic Stuart McKinnon.
We give them out typically on a scene where somebody has either used their kit and now they don't have one on the scene, which would be high risk, or on a scene where somebody has used and they never had a naloxone kit to begin with. So we don't want to leave that scene knowing that there's a high risk of reoccurrence or potentially a strain of a substance that was so strong that the first dose of naloxone is not going to last and they're going to relapse into this overdose state or poison state. We want to make sure we leave them with a kit when we leave. I think the next step, though, is in addition to reducing stigma around these types of poisonings, is educating people more on what we can do to save lives. It's not just naloxone, it's rescue breathing, it's staying on the scene to be with the person, to be able to provide information to responders rather than leaving them alone.
So it sounds like you'd be in favor of pairing this kind of naloxone training with basic life support.
Absolutely. I think, given the situation we're in, unless we can find a way to prevent these types of poisonings from happening altogether, we need to make naloxone training and other supportive measures part of first aid, CPR, and that type of training and education. We see it
But these are familiar people. Like if you respond to them as a paramedic, you've probably seen them before, haven't you?
Yeah. We've had repeat users, repeat responses, and